start the recording. So we are recording this webinar. Welcome. Happy New Year. It's the first members webinar we've had in 2019. Okay, let's get started. The agenda for today is to look at three major areas. ESS BIS grants, we're going there first to look at the Accelerating Commercialisation Grant. There's been some subtle changes made by the Entrepreneurs Program and the government to that grant. So we'll revisit that because it's the largest grant available for small and medium enterprises. We're also going to give you an update on the crowdsourced funding advisory services product package, and we'll review that so that hopefully you are fully across all aspects of crowdsourced funding so that you can communicate with your clients and prospects. And we have a number of new subscribers with us today. Welcome, and I hope you enjoy and get real benefits from your subscription to ESS BIZTOOLS. That's what we want to make sure that you can achieve. And part of that will be to visit the training package, because that's where I believe you should start on your journey with ESS BIZTOOLS. I want to go to a review of the Accelerating Commercialisation Grant. This is paper 014196 in the system, which is under Australian government grants, and obviously it's included within the grants available within ESS BIS grants. The responsible organisation for the Accelerating Commercialisation Grant is the Entrepreneurs Program, which reports back to AusIndustry. AusIndustry do the administration. All of the commercialisation advisors are contractors, mainly drawn from private enterprise. Some of them are from academia, that are there to guide and assist companies on their journey into this program. The Entrepreneurs Program is also involved with a number of other programs, but today we just want to concentrate on the Accelerating Commercialisation. The commercialisation advisors, there's about 32 of them around Australia. Whilst most of them live in capital cities or near capital cities, they are allocated areas around Australia so as to give a very effective Australian-wide coverage for this program. There is also a expert network that advises on various aspects of this program. Let's look at eligibility. Your client will need a novel product, process, or service that they wish to commercialise. Now, that's as far as the definition goes, a novel product, process, or service that they wish to commercialise. The applicants can be a company, or an individual or partnership can apply. But if you have a client that's an individual or a partnership that's applying, part of the process is that if they are going to be invited to participate in Accelerating Commercialisation grants, they have to agree to incorporate a company and transfer the intellectual property and the business that they are operating into that company. Otherwise, they will not get supported. And the company needs to have the ownership, access, or beneficial use of the intellectual property. Now, beneficial use is often debated. It has to be more than than a city in Australia. So I think the Entrepreneurs Program would be looking more than just, say, the intellectual property for the city of Sydney. It needs to be preferably Australia, preferably the world, but in some instances it might not extend beyond Australia if they've licensed to use overseas developed intellectual property. But in the main, companies will have developed their own intellectual property. The turnover has to be under $20 million per annum. And the company must be able to illustrate that it can fund 50% of the cost. Your client doesn't need to have 50% of the cost of the project sitting in their bank account when the application's submitted. And indeed, they really don't need to have that sum of money as a package of funds at any stage during the project. But what they need with your assistance is a cash flow forecast that can be submitted as part of the application that indicates where their share of the cost is going to come from. Now, that could come from cash flow from other aspects of their business that they have, or it could be going to be generated through new shareholder subscriptions into the company. And we'll talk a bit more about shareholder subscriptions in a moment. The project has to be completed in 2 years. So I can't just roll on into the future. There is a requirement for the project to be completed within 2 years. I'm just checking to see whether there's any questions. If you have any questions during the webinar, can you please type them in on your computer, and I will answer the questions later on during this project. We're also going to send you the PowerPoint slides after the webinar, and we're going to send you a link to the recording of this webinar. So the grant can be a maximum of $1 million, and obviously the funding's on a 50% basis. So you could have a project going up to $2 million. Each month when the approvals are announced, there is always 4 or 5 companies that have been granted the $1 million. Sometimes it's 10 or 12. So that means that they've got projects costing $2 million to undertake the commercialization process. Let me go back to something that I probably should have said at the beginning. This grant is not to fund research and development. Whilst a little bit of research and development might creep into it, it is basically to fund commercialization once a product has been conceived through the research and development phase. So to apply, the client needs to complete an expression of interest, and most clients will need your assistance in completing that document because it is a rather complicated and very detailed application process that's needed. That will be reviewed by a customer service manager who is an employee of Oz Industry to determine whether that person believes that this business is going to make the grade. And then the customer service manager from Oz Industry perhaps will assign the file to a commercialization advisor. Now, if you're going to have clients involved in trying to raise capital or grant funds under accelerating commercialization, my suggestion is you find out who the commercialization advisor or advisors in the big cities are and organize a conversation between your client and the advisor before any of this process starts, because that will assist, if the client's got a reasonable project, of course, in the ongoing process, because the commercialization advisor will make contact with the Oz Industry employee and will assist on that review process as it unfolds. So I think it's a very good idea to have contact earlier. The grant application has to be completed once the commercialisation advisor has given the tick of approval. This looks quite good. Let's now submit it to the review panel. So the funding, the company's contribution, the 50%, could be contributed by the company raising capital as an early stage innovation company. Bear in mind the ESIC is established to assist companies to commercialise their research and development. So this company's probably spent a fair bit of money on research and development and perhaps will pass the test to be treated as an early stage innovation company at this stage. The real benefit is for the investors. The investors receive a 20% tax offset up to a maximum offset of $10,000 for a retail investor, because the maximum investment for a retail investor into an ESIC is $50,000, so that equates to $10,000. But for a sophisticated investor, the tax offset can be as high as $200,000. So that's equating to $1 million investment, 20% tax offset, $200,000. The other big benefit for the investors is that they are potentially eligible for an exemption from capital gains tax if they hold those shares for longer than 12 months and less than 10 years. At the end of the 10 years, the investment in the company is revalued, so you get a new cost base. So don't overlook early stage innovation companies, please. And within the ESS BIZTOOLS product packages, we do have a complete package on early stage innovation company. And the other funding opportunity is crowdsource funding. The company may be too big or too old for early stage innovation companies, which is normally a company under 3 years of age, income under $200,000, expenditure under $1 million. So it might not be suitable to look at an early stage innovation company, but the company could well and truly suit the requirements for crowdsource funding. It won't get an accelerating commercialization if its turnover is too high, because the cutoff for accelerating commercialization is 20 million. The cutoff for crowdsource funding is 25 million, but the company should be able to fit under that program. And we're going to talk a little bit more about crowdsource funding shortly. And the other area that I forgot to put onto this PowerPoint was Section 708. And that's the traditional area that companies who are having to go to the public to raise capital would be raising capital under Section 708 of the Corporations Act. Just remember, it's a maximum of $2 million that can be raised in a 12-month period for no more than 20 investors under Section 708. Or the company could be going to supply the funding from its own cash flow or from some other source that has to be disclosed as part of the application process. And obviously the Entrepreneurs Program will need to accept that. So what's in it from an accounting point of view? The majority of your clients, I believe, will require assistance for this grant. This is a rather detailed application process. A lot of questions are asked. Budgets and cash flow forecasts have to be submitted as part of the application process. So most of your clients will be looking for assistance. And let's look at some of the potential services that your accounting firm may be able to contribute. Assistance in the expression of interest phase. Assistance in the grant application. Consultants charge $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 up to $12,000 for this process. So it is a complicated area, and your clients will probably need assistance. If you're a little unsure on that process, we are happy on a consultancy service basis to look at that. We're happy to take phone calls, of course, as part of your subscription to ESS BizTools. So if you need some assistance, please contact us. But let's look at some of the other work that could be generated, and this would be from the grant funding, because within the application there would be monies allocated for this work. Normally these companies have a business plan prepared that's now going to take them out into the business world, and they may need to raise further capital. So for argument's sake, under crowdsource funding, which if we had a project that was going to cost, let's say, the full $2 million, and the company's trying to raise their share, $1 million from crowdsource funding, they may do that, all linked together. This is why the money's been raised, and the approval from the entrepreneurs program would have been on the basis that the company needs to raise the capital. The government will not part with their money until they know the company has raised that capital. But after that, 3 or 4 months or even later that project's been completed, the company may then wish to go back to the market to try to raise some additional capital to give them working capital funds to be able to roll out more as the accelerating commercialization grant projects completed, because the company can raise up to $5 million in that 12-month period. Budgets and cash flow forecasts. Corporate governance mentoring. Many companies that go through accelerating commercialization have inexperienced directors, and part of the process could be to improve their business knowledge, their skills, how boards operate, because invariably they're going to end up with other people on their board of directors who are not currently part of their structure. And they need to make sure that they're going to be able to work as equals in that boardroom environment. So many of them will need some mentoring on skills that directors require. Some will need a complete briefing. Some of them, of course, could take a week off and go to the Australian Institute of Company Directors diploma courses, but getting that week off and going away is difficult at times to arrange. So in the meantime, we have developed material that you could utilize for the corporate governance phase. Invariably, there's a project management role in this grant because it's a large sum of money, and the Entrepreneurs Program requires a report to be submitted to them every 3 months. It requires an update of the cash flow forecast, because that's the funding arrangement they're going to make for that next quarter. So there is a real role there for project management. If your client says they're too busy and they haven't got anyone internally that can attend to that phase, that's another project that you could bid for. I've been successful in submitting project management processes for a project running over 14 months at $20,000 to $25,000, and that meant that we prepared the quarterly reports and went through everything to do with the reporting process with the client before it went back to the Entrepreneurs Program. So hopefully that gives you some idea on the projects that you might look at. Now, before we go on to crowdsource funding, I'm just going to check whether we have any questions. I've got no questions. So if you think of a question relative to the Accelerating Commercialization Program, please type it in and we'll have a look at it in a moment. Now I'm just going to Just bring up the PowerPoints. Okay, what I wanted to show you first, we have developed a scorecard on crowdsource funding, which is in the process of being finalised. We're just giving you an example. So we have gone through and dissected this according to the information we are able to extract from the intermediaries' websites. So if you wanted to get an idea of who's doing what, this report will be available within the product package next week. So what we've listed is the name of the company. Obviously, this is for Equities. Equities is a rather experienced intermediary because they've also got a office in Auckland, New Zealand. So they've been operating in the New Zealand crowdsource funding processes, and they've been running for nearly 6 years. So where we have recorded what the minimum target is for a company, what the maximum target is. So you can see here on this Endeavour Brewing Company, 305,000 was their minimum, 2,305,000 was the maximum. The legislation doesn't define any correlation between a minimum target and a maximum target. All that is required is that in the crowdsource funding offer document, you are able to identify what you will do, what the usage is going to be of any extra money that you raise over the minimum target. We are updating this report tomorrow. We've decided to do it as at the 19th of each month because it was the 19th of October that crowdsource funding commenced. So at that stage, when we last did this on the 19th of January, the company had raised $337,000. So they exceeded their minimum target, and there was 20 days left on the capital raising. At that stage, they'd raised 110%. Now, I've seen some updated reports that's on the Equities website, and they have raised more money than that. And where we can, we are including details of what's disclosed on fees. So the fee that Equities were charging there was 6% of the overall capital raised. You'll notice there's some blanks in some of this, and that's because we've been unable to determine the information, but we are starting to talk to the intermediaries and trying to encourage them to make some information available. So just going through the headings at the top of these columns, obviously we've got the company name. We are enclosing for your knowledge the description of what the business does. And some of this has been abbreviated, of course. And you can log on to the intermediary's website to find the documentation that supports this. The minimum target, maximum target. Where we've been able to identify the share price, we've included it. Some of these offers have got other benefits for investors, and we're just alerting you that they have because we say yes. That company there, which made premium socks and underwear, actually gave some of their product to the investors. Some companies are identifying a minimum investment. So in the Endeavour Brewery Company, it was $100. The progressive amount that was raised at the 19th of January was $337. I've already talked about this, 20 days to go. When they're finished, we will be recording the total amount raised so you can see what it was and what the percentage that was against the minimum target, because that's the information. And when we can, if we get the number of investors, we'll be recording that and the average investment. So that if we go down here to some of the completed projects, so this company, Man Rags, makes premium socks and underwear. The target was 300,000. They actually raised 363,000, so that's 120%. The days to raise the capital was 40. The number of investors, 177, so the average investment was $2,046, and so on. So hopefully this will give you a feel for what's happening. This one is now Birchall, a intermediary from Melbourne. Now, not all these companies have raised their capital since the 19th of October 2018. You will recall that if a company was an unlisted public company, it could start raising capital from around February 2018. There wasn't that many went through that process, but if their information's been included on the intermediary's website, we've included in this document for your review. The difference now, of course, is an unlisted public company, as long as it meets the turnover requirements, can still apply for crowdsourced funding. But the big change is that small proprietary companies can now go through this process without having to upgrade to an unlisted public company. We then have enable funding from Adelaide on the information we were able to extract from them, and on market, another intermediary from Sydney. And you'll see this number of investors and the average investment. It's a long way from the maximum $10,000, isn't it? So it's indicative that a lot of small investors are investing in these companies as well. But amounts raised, 815, 593, 815, 2.18 million, $265,000. Interesting figures. So that has now been included, or will be included, I should rephrase that, will be included within the members area under the crowdsource funding product package from next week. We just got to get it in there. We might do some more work on this form later in the year. I'm really trying to negotiate with the intermediaries to make sure we're going to get all of this information so that it's available for you, our members, to be able to look at. And one of the real benefits I believe that you're going to get from this is an understanding of what some of these companies do. So solution to disposable coffee cups, mobile asset holding, technology to, I think that should be halve construction time, energy retailer for solar households. So hopefully that will give you an idea of what they are doing. There are now 13 intermediaries. Unfortunately, ASIC doesn't publish a list of the 13 companies. I've discovered one of the others, which is a company called AgCrowd, based in Sydney, and it's going to service the agricultural industry, according to their website. They haven't done anything at this stage. Some companies are not publishing their information. So here's Bill Folder, which hasn't published any of the results. Some of them have closed. I know this one here, the mining incubator, raised $4.2 million. But so it's early days, and hopefully we'll get this system to work. And I'd like to hear your feedback on this. Do you think it's a good idea? You're interested in getting a scorecard so you get an idea, so that when you're talking to clients, you can be giving them more of a feel for what's happening. And again, you'll see what some of these companies are doing. Cloud-enabled student tutoring, multi-venue medical services business. That was in New South Wales and southern Queensland, and so on. A mining incubator and project initiator raised $4.2 million. The project's in Greenland, and it's three young mining engineers and geologists who are coming together to create this business. I'm just going to check again to see whether we've got any questions. Thanks, Tony. Tony says, yes, that looks great. Yeah, so I think Tony's voting that we continue to do it. We're going to do it at least for the next few months because I want to see how this market plays out. But I think it's part of the service we will continue to offer. One of the interesting things is for all of you to visit the intermediaries' website. So you've got their names, just go onto their websites. You have to flick through a bit to find the current offerings, and then you'll get a presentation on each individual company. There's webinars, there's videos, and the companies are able to do presentations either in the intermediaries' offices or in their own, just that the intermediary needs control of that. And the key thing that's got to happen in any of these type of promotions is that the investment warning has to be given. And I think you'll find them quite interesting. And I'm pleasantly surprised, having read the cold legislation and tried to visualize how some of this was going to be implemented. It's quite exciting when you look at some of the websites and listen to the presentations of the company CEO or chair as to what that company wants to achieve. So we're at the very beginning of this, and I think it's going to be a very interesting future. And your opportunity is to really make crowdsource funding a key product that you are promoting to your clients and in your locations so that other people know that you're doing it, and hopefully you'll get the benefit of their work. I know it's not available for every one of your clients. I only wish it was. But I think if you sit down and think about it and look at the form that I'm going to show you shortly, you will see the benefits in talking to your clients about this. So just hang on for a moment while I bring up the ESS BIZTOOLS website, because I now want to get into the product package. Okay, so what I want to go to now is crowdsource funding. So this is the members area on crowdsource funding. Some of you may find it beneficial to have a look at in the promotion area of the website under the Learn More for crowdsource funding. We have a fair bit of material there, some of which has been repeated in the product package. And I suspect that some of you haven't had a good look at crowdsource funding yet. Here's the list of the material that's within crowdsource funding. We are doing updates. Obviously, one of them is going to be the scorecard being included in this section. But there is some other material we're fine-tuning because of what we can now see the intermediaries are doing, and that will be progressively added into the site. You can click on to any of these forms direct from here if you wish. The one I just want to bring up at this stage, though, is the eligibility matrix. This is 5004. Because I think this is one of the key documents that you need to have on your desk or have one of your team members going through and looking at your client list and determining who might be potentially interested in crowdsource funding. Please don't wait for the clients to come and ask you, because some of them you may miss out on. They may think that you're not interested in crowdsource funding, so they've gone off and talked to someone else. And the real problem then is that you may then lose them as a total client. So we've grouped this into the legal requirements. There's 5 main legal requirements, and they're summarized there, and you can read them at your leisure. We've included in here because some people have rang me and said, what's the age? Well, I think the age of the company, people are getting confused with the early stage innovation companies. Yes, there's a 3-year or a 6-year limit with early stage innovation companies, mainly 3, far lesser opportunities for up to 6 years. And the business needs to have done some specific development of a new product, process, or service. None of that applies in crowdsource funding. There is no age limit. So the company could be a brand new startup, or it could be 95 years of age. It doesn't matter. And there's no control on the business or industry. At the end of the day, it is going to be the intermediary and then the marketplace that decides whether your company or your client's company is going to make the grade. What we have done then is gone through and looked at the various possibilities for crowdsource funding, and we've identified 10 key characteristics, and you can look at those, and you may even have some more that you are going to add to this list. If you don't mind, can you let me know who they might be so that we can share it with everyone else? But we've tried to say it's a company that wants to scale up. So currently it might have a 2 to 3, 4 million turnover, and they've got aspirations over the next few years of going to 5, 6, 8, 10 million dollars, or it could even be a higher base. But to do that, they're all going to require working capital contributions to be made. So crowdsource funding could be of great interest for them, or they could be a very ambitious business, or someone wanting to expand, or someone with a big audacious idea. So you could go through that and look at it and identify your clients who you think might be eligible on that basis. So what I'm going to do now is bring up the procedure control form. We've got some new subscribers, so I just want to talk to them, and perhaps some of our longer subscribers, if you haven't utilized the procedure control forms before. Within each of these product packages, and there's 23 product packages in total, there is a procedure control form to try to guide you through this process of utilizing this product. So there's some background material trying to give an overview of what we're trying to do for you and show you how we think the system should be used. And then we've divided this into 6 sections, really. We got from A to E, which is the general organizational material. And then what we've called the roadmap reference is really the working area. And we've broken that into 12 steps so that we can guide you through. So let's quickly move through this. There's some videos and webinars included in this package. Please use them to get your team familiar with what crowdsource funding is all about. They can be very good staff training areas. The people who are going to be involved, and in fact, I think all of your accountants should read the paper 003055, which explains how crowdsource funding operates. Within this product package, and indeed in our other product packages, we have marketing material, because we understand that a lot of your clients will not know that you're interested in crowdsource funding. Now, you can use this material or develop your own or edit our material, it doesn't matter. But I think you should be indicating to your clients and to your wider business community that you are proactively involved in crowdsourced funding advice. So we've summarized the material there, which is covering seminars or webinars. I've recorded a seminar webinar for you, but our suggestion, of course, is you do something similar and record your own. It's not meant that you utilize our recording in that, because that's there for your clients. So you could place it on your website so that they can hear someone from your firm telling them what you can do. And we are making the transcript available. So if you want to basically use very similar words, you may do so. We've got some articles for your website. We've got some articles that you could send your clients or your prospects. We've got a news release that you could send to your local media, and please don't ignore the free newspapers that are scattered throughout the capital cities, because I know it's going to be very hard to get an article like that run in the Australian or the Sydney Morning Herald. So that's the promotional material. And then we've got the actual links to the material that can help you. There's a section, as there is in each of our product packages, for the quotations and proposals. You can obviously develop your own if you wish, but it's there. There's then an overview of various documents. If you click onto these, they will take you to them. That will be very beneficial in the staff training for your team who are going to be working in this area. It's very important that whoever's going to be talking to clients has got a very good working knowledge of crowdsourced funding. Because if they don't appear to be confident and understand the subject, well, some of your clients might well go to someone else. Section E is corporate governance concessions. For most of you, you basically can ignore that, because it is only applicable to those unlisted public companies that had been granted that status prior to the 19th of October 2018, because there had been different rules up to the 19th of October 2018. But if you've got none of those clients, you don't have to worry about that. And then we start working through the steps which we've called the roadmap references. And the first thing I think you need to try to understand is, if you've conducted the seminar or webinar that we suggested as part of the marketing exercise, is to then determine whether the company considers itself eligible and whether the directors are interested. Because there will be some people that fit that client matrix that I showed you earlier who will never be interested in trying to raise capital and allocate part of their shareholding to external investors. That's their right. I think your obligation, though, is to inform them and then let them make their decision as to whether they're interested. And then we take you through so you can work your way through with the client. So we're suggesting you have the seminar or webinar and then go back and talk to each of the attendees. Are you interested in pursuing this or not? And I'd be inclined to give them one further hour in a free discussion. And then if they tell you they are interested, you'd be telling them that you're now going to start billing them for professional advice. And in our system, we have dissected that into short segments, because I suspect that some of these people may change their mind when they fully appreciate the sort of disclosure that's got to be made in an offer document, because this is a de facto prospectus. So that we are breaking this down, as you can see. Is the company interested? So you could, in your quote, have said, we will do this briefing for a fee, which might be $1,000, and it's at that stage that they really get to the point of no return, I suppose, that you're then going to be saying to them, well, we're going to carry on from here. But we are doing some work which should be finalised by the end of next week to just break the fee process down a bit, if you wish, so that a client could in fact change their mind, but you've covered yourself for the time that you've had to put in up to that stage. So this is where I'm saying here in our notes, level of disclosure, is your client ready to proceed? Because if they've ever had a problem with ASIC in their lives, not only in this company, but any company, it has to be disclosed in this document. And some of your clients might be reluctant to do that. And I just believe they really need to know that before you take them through the full process and bill them for the total fee. And some of them are likely to turn around and say, oh, pity you didn't tell me that at the beginning. So we cover it even back in the seminar, but they might not be registering as clearly as what they will when you're sitting there and saying, now this is the template of what the offer document's going to look like. And if you've ever had a problem with ASIC, it has to be disclosed, because the intermediary and ASIC will be checking on that in any case, because ASIC's obviously got all the records. We want to make sure they understand the investors' categories, the retail investors, and what the cooling off period means and how share applications can be made. And then we come to the very important area, the role of the intermediary. So we've prepared the material for you. All you need to do is to make sure you understand it and appreciate it. But the intermediary's obviously got a very clear role. They've got very strong responsibilities. The then Treasurer and now Prime Minister called them the gatekeepers. They're the gatekeepers for ASIC. But they're also promoters, as their websites will show you. And that's one of the areas that I'm very pleased with, that while they might still think they're in straitjackets under the control from ASIC, it doesn't really come across to me like that. I think they've been able to negotiate with ASIC some good marketing freedom, whereby they're encouraging under the communications channel, which was always in the legislation, but the communications channels enabling them to produce videos and webinars. And then we look at contact with intermediary. There's now 13 of them in Australia. 6 of them are located in Sydney, and one in Melbourne, and one in Adelaide, and one in Perth. But unfortunately, I don't know where the rest are. So that probably added up, or should have added up to about, sorry, not 6, 5 in. So I know where 8 of them, or names of 8 of them, but I'm trying to search out, and ASIC are not very cooperative on that. So that's a work in progress from my point of view. But you need to be saying to your client that you can negotiate with an intermediary, because the intermediary is able to set their own fee, obviously in with agreement from your client. And the intermediaries, as you can see when you visit their websites, have got different approaches. They are all free enterprise operators. No two accounting firms are necessarily the same, and it's the same with the intermediaries. They've got different flares. And then we get to the preparing the offer document. So we've got a template of the offer document. Obviously, there's the legal requirements, which is to do with the directors, the senior managers, and what the company does, its history. And then you've got the promotional side of the document, because there's got to be some good news in there, some nice photographs, some good promotions, because this document is just like a prospectus. It's got to sell the concept to the investors to invest in this company. So we've covered all that, and it's there for you to use. So can I suggest that you look at that? If you have any questions, please get back to us and we will answer them. If you think you need more in future training sessions for members, we will look at doing that. I now need to move on, otherwise we're not going to get this finished in time within the 1 hour. Business Advisory Services introduction was the other area. We have some new subscribers, and please remember we are very keen to deliver to you a welcome webinar, sorry, not a video, whereby we will work through, because it's important that you get a good grounding in what this process is all about. The area that I recommend that a new subscriber should visit first is what I've now gone to, the Business Advisory Services Training Package. There's some webinars and videos included in this. Please look at it. There's a series of modules, which you should have on your screen there at present. Our suggestion is that you appoint a partner or a manager, or indeed a external consultant, if you wish, to be the facilitator on this process, and have your team come together weekly for about an hour. So this will take you about 3 months, 13 weeks, to work your way through this process. The key objective you want to find is who's interested in being involved in business advisory services, and then really zero in on those people. But the rest of your team, especially your accountants and any marketing people you have, I think should still be part of the process for as long as possible, so that they have a real working knowledge of what we are trying to do within your firm under advisory services. Because it's very important that they refer clients across to you and come and talk to you about someone that might need a virtual CFO service, someone that might need some improvements in their debtors, someone that's obviously got potential problems if they don't register on the personal property securities register, someone who would like to raise capital as crowdsourced funding. So to access this, it's the same process. We have a procedure control form. That you would access, and it will guide you through the work that I think the team that you've assembled to look at the advisory services content within your firm should be working through. And what we try to do in these first 3 modules is really set the scene. Why are you doing this? Why are you perhaps moving away from your traditional reliance on annual accounts, tax returns, some audits, bank submissions, and maybe some financial planning work? Why are you moving? Why is advisory now a hot topic? Why are the big 4 firms and the top 100 firms racing towards more and more advisory work? Well, I think we all know the answer to that. Taxation returns are becoming more and more of a commodity type product, but it also gives your team some very interesting work to be involved in. So this will guide you through setting the scene. There's some checklists to be completed by partners and by your team, whether they're accountants or marketing or admin people, to try to understand what they're really interested in working in. So I just wanted you to be aware of that, so you can see what we are doing. And if you want to, you can just access any of these forms themselves. I do just want to visit one thing. I just want to check there's no more questions. I hope that means I'm answering all your questions. We'll just go back into the modules. There's one in particular that I just want to bring to your attention, and that's the SME needs analysis. And anyone that knows me knows that I probably talk about this every time I get the opportunity, because this is based on a document which was produced by Andrew Geddes, the founder of Financial Management Research Centre at the New England University in Armidale, and later on with Smith Inc., and for the last 11 years has been the chair of Green Cross Limited, a very successful top 200 public company in the ASX list. And he started that company with a young chap who had, Glenn Richards, who had in fact been a student in a class that he conducted many years ago. So, and he acted as his advisor right through. Andrew had originally developed the SME needs analysis, and it was a lot shorter than what this one now is. And with his permission, we've expanded it. This is a great document for you to talk to your clients about. Give it to your clients. Ask them to start completing it. Because what we're trying to get your client to tell you, in effect, is what work they want you to do for them. So give them the document. Have they got questions about their ratios? Have they got questions about their debtors' days outstanding? Do they even know what that term means? Have they got worries with their cash flows or their budgets? Do they want some input on marketing? And all of your team understand some basic marketing. Or have they got problems with human resources? And we have got access to Blackstone Business Group articles on human resources. They're a great service provider, and they're one of our affiliates. What about customers? Do they need some input on a CRM, some help on doing surveys? Do they want you to do some analysis on their competitors? They need some business modeling, number of customers, average sale, frequency of visit, gross profit, tinkering. Corporate governance, do they need some input on that? What about grants? There's hundreds of grants, and in a future session like this, we'll spend more time on grants. What about the personal property securities register? Have they heard about one of their friends basically losing their business because they didn't register on some government register? Or are they doing research and development and they've spent $200,000 and they've done that through a partnership? They might get a bit toey when they realise they're not going to get the government rebate. And I've come across a couple of situations very similar to what I just said. The undertaking of research and development had been in the wrong entity. So this will give you a start. Do they want to do some exporting? Do they need some improvement in managing their costs? Or are they interested in raising capital? They've heard about crowdsource funding. What are you going to do to assist them? Do they want their business plan updated? Now, that was all just a review of their current situation. They might need some taxation planning. And then we get into future planning. Please visit this form and have a good look at it and decide how you can utilize it with your clients. Now, I've gone back to the questions. I can't see that I've got any more questions. I hope that means that I have answered your questions. If you think of some questions later on when we finish this webinar, please send me an email and I will answer them for you. So thank you very much for your time today. Obviously, my plan was to give you an overview of some of the sections within ESS BIZTOOLS, and this is the way we have decided to present the members' webinars this year. So we're going to be presenting a members' webinar once per month, and we'll advise you of the date. Next month, we're going to run it on a theme of risk management. Obviously, personal property securities register is going to be one of the main items because the first 7 years of the registration process has now concluded. Have your clients looked at that? Because those first 7 years registrations expire. So if they're still dealing with that business and they still needed the cover, they have to reactivate it. We're also going to look at insurance policies. I live in Townsville and we've had some unbelievable floods here that you've probably heard about. And some of the bad luck stories starting to run in the media now relating to people's insurance covers. It never ceases to amaze me that businesses don't know whether they're covered for flood or cyclones or other sort of natural disasters. And I know in other parts of Australia you've been having bushfires and other events. So we're going to look at some risk management strategies. That's really the theme for our next members webinar. So thank you very much for your participation today. If you've got any questions or comments, please let me know. Have a great day. Goodbye.